All right, so our first assignment is going to be creating web page buttons. And what these are is typically you go to a web page like Google or Amazon or any of these other fancy websites, and they have these buttons here. And some of them are actual just text that they've put inside of the screen, and some of them are not just text. Some of them are actual graphics that they've created inside Photoshop in order to make it a button. So as an example, like this is a picture that was inside Photoshop, and it's been brought into a web page to make this do what it's doing. So we're going to create something very, very simple, and it's just to get your feet wet in Photoshop. It's nothing that you're going to use on your demo reel or anything crazy. The goal with this is that we want to create something like this is a good example here, where you can see how we have different iterations or different looks of the button, but they're all using the same kind of thing. So like this download, upload, search, cancel, send, and next, you can see how each one of these has the same look to them, but they all do different things. This one says download, this one says upload, and they all have a different icon next to them. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now, one of the things we need to be aware of when we create buttons is that we need to know the size of them. Okay, and if I just go here and I say web pages common size, and let's see, this one's going to say there's no best size for a website, but it does give you statistics over the screen resolutions that people typically use. Okay, now why is that important? Because my screen right now is 1600 pixels wide. So when I go into Photoshop, I have to know that if I created a document that was more than 1600 pixels, then on my screen it would not show. So you can see here the trend is this orangey one, which looks like it's this 1366 by 768. Okay, so 1366 pixels, those little dots that we talked about going across the screen, by 768 going vertically. Okay, so if I wanted a bar to fit about halfway on my screen, then I would just take that number and just cut it in half. Okay, now they get fancier as you go on, and you could actually create buttons in other programs that would actually stretch and do other stuff, but we're just going to keep this simple. Okay, so knowing that it's 1366, I obviously don't want to exceed 1366. Now the lowest you'll see is 1024, so realistically I wouldn't want to even exceed 1024, because on those ones I may exclude people, and you'll see that this one is actually like the third one down, fourth one down, as far as which is most popular. All right, so I'm going to close that, and we're going to open up Photoshop. And remember, when we open Photoshop, every time we want to hold Control, Alt, and Shift, and then click that PS button. And just holding the Control, Alt, Shift until it gives me the little message saying, do you want to delete your preferences? There we go. And I'm going to say yes. Now once you've established your preferences and you know what's going on, you don't have to delete that. It's just easier to kind of stay on task with what I'm doing, and what, if you find another tutorial, what they're doing as far as how you have Photoshop set up. Eventually you'll get to the point where you will have your stuff moved into a certain spot and you want to keep it in that spot, or you'll be adding different plugins or whatever else that you want to make sure that you have loaded in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to New. And remember what I said, that we don't care about resolution for this because we're not printing this. This is going on a web page. So all we care about is the actual width and height in pixels. Okay, so here's the width, here's the height, but these are inches. I want to change this to pixels, and I'm going to go with an 800 pixel wide document. Okay, so that would span, if this was my screen, like I said, is about 1600 pixels. On my screen it would come to about halfway. Okay, that's probably a pretty good width. And then for the height, I'm going to try 300. Let's see what 300 looks like. If I need to change it, I can change it afterwards. This is going on a computer, so it's going to be RGB. It's going on a web page, so we can just leave it as 8-bit. The background being white is perfect. And I'll go up here and I'll call this Sarcona underscore web buttons underscore 01. Okay. Now this is commonly referred to as a nav bar. All right. So this right now, if I look up here, is 100%. For a nav bar, these buttons are huge. That's why I wanted to go with such a big number, just so you can see that right away I can tell this is not going to be what I want. So if I just come up to image and I go to image size, I can resize this document. Okay. Now again, it's set to inches, so I'll just set it to pixels. And I'm going to go with 100. Okay. Oops. You hit undo and go back to image size. One thing I forgot to click off. Let me go back to here and I'll type in 100. And you'll see that it's automatically resizing this because this guy is set to be on. So I turn that off. And that way I have separate controls for this and separate controls for that. And it's possible that 100 is still too much. Maybe 50 would be good. Let's hit OK and see. Yeah, 50 is actually probably a good size for a nav bar. You don't want to have your buttons take up too much space on your screen. Okay. So that's what it would look like on my screen as far as that. Now, like I showed at Amazon site, some of the buttons might be a little bit bigger. Some websites have buttons smaller. It all depends on the actual website design. Okay, this is meant to just give you an introduction to Photoshop by using this to create buttons. Now we have 800 pixels going across. I'm going to jump back to Google here. And you'll see that there's different kinds of buttons that are out there. Here's, I can click, there we go. So for this one, you'll see there's a message, cloud, contact, tags, maps, profile, download, music, movies, all of these different kinds of buttons. I obviously don't want to have, and some of these are double, I don't want to have, all of these buttons in one row. I want to keep it to, a little simple thing. I like the one down here, which was just download, upload, search, cancel, send, and next. Okay, I don't care what your buttons say on them. But I do want you to have at least 6 buttons. Okay, so for this first one, follow along, do exactly like I do, and afterwards you're going to create a second set that'll be your own design. All right, so we're going to create 6 buttons, and I'm just going to use these download, upload, search, cancel, send, and next as my buttons. All right, so I have 6 buttons that I need. I don't care about the wording right now. So to take this, I need to divide this into 6 equal parts. Okay. So if I go to my calculator and I say I have 800 pixels and I want to divide that by 6, that'll give me 133.333333 pixels. Okay, so if I go here, and what I want to do is, I'm just going to show you this, is that if I took this rectangular marquee and I went to fixed size and I typed in 133 pixels, and our height was about 50 high, and I click in this corner and drag it to the left, you'll see that's the size of our button. That's how big that button is going to be. I'm just going to ignore this 0.333333, and afterwards I can clip the document down if I need to. Okay, so there's my button right there. Now just for sizing, if I were to click again, you'll see there's a second button. And I click again, there's a third button. And I click again, there's a fourth button. I click again, there's a fifth button. And I click again, and there's the sixth button. So just really quickly, I'm visualizing, how this is going to fit in here, and making sure that I would have room for 6 buttons. Sometimes you do the math wrong and it just doesn't turn out right. Okay, so I'm just going to hit Control D, or I can go to Select, Deselect to deselect that. And I want to create some guides in here. Okay, so I'm going to go to hit Control R, or I can go to View Rulers. Okay, either way brings the rulers up. And right now it's set for inches. I can tell because it says 0, 1, 2, and obviously I know I have 800 pixels going across. So I'm going to right click in the ruler and say pixels, and this will make it a pixel ruler. Okay, I also want to bring up my info. So I'm going to go to Window, Info, or I could hit F8. Okay, Now it's a good thing to keep in mind that you want to write this stuff down. If you're not going to remember where info is, or you're not going to remember where select deselect is, or how to bring the rulers up, make sure you write it down. Keep a little list of all these little tips and tricks as we go. Okay. So what I want to do is bring a guide. Okay, and a guide is simply just like where I want stuff to happen. So I'm going to click and drag from this bar straight across, and you'll see right about here in my info, it's going to tell me the number. So I just want to bring this to about 133, right there. Come on. And then let go. Okay. Now it might help if I zoom in. So I'm going to hit Control Plus to zoom in a little bit. Alright, so now this guide is at 133. I'm going to click and drag another guide, and that one's going to be at 133 plus 133, which is 266. Okay, I'm going to click and drag another guide, still watching that number for the next one. So 133 plus 266 would be 399. And you'll see sometimes it's actually a bit difficult to get it exactly where you want. Now, Photoshop right now is trying to snap. If you look, I'm going to 396, then 400. Okay? So I'm just going to drag this guide back. And I'm going to go up to View and turn Snap off. Now I can go here and drag this over to 399 without a problem. There we go. Okay. Now the math gets a little trickier. So 399 plus 133 would be 432. Nope, 532. There we go. And then one more. 532 plus 133 would be 655. There we go. Okay, and visually I can tell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They all look like they're the same size. Everything's happy in Wonderland. Okay, so I can hide this info again. I'm just going to stick it in that little bar. All right, so there we go. All right, so now I would need to create the button shape for each one of these. So I'm going to make a new layer. So I'm going to go to New Layer down here, and I'm just going to click here. Now, if you didn't have this thing set to fixed size 133 and 50, I'll just set it back to normal. This is why we drew guides, is that we can just draw, and you'll see how, oops, if I go back to view and turn my snap back on, how if I click and drag from outside the box into the box, it'll actually snap right to that corner. And then I can see this thing is perfectly lined up. Okay. All right. So now what I want to do is I want this to be, I'm going to hit Control Spacebar, click and drag to zoom in, hold the spacebar, drag it over. Okay. Remember, if you're on a Mac, it's Command Spacebar. Okay. So what I want to do is I don't want my button to go right to the edge because eventually I'm going to have, you know, like a little line right here. I don't want these lines like colliding with each other. Also, there's a little bit of a drop shadow, and I have to leave room for all that kind of stuff. So I want it to actually be inset of this. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of fanciness here. I'm going to bring another guide down, okay? And then this guide, right now I'm at 0. You can even see there's a little thing as I'm dragging it down as to what that number is. So I'm going to bring this to about, let's see, we're going to 50, let's say about 7 there. Maybe not 7. Let's go to 4. There we go. I'm going to go to 4 this way. I have a trackball, that's why it's a little bit more difficult for me to lay these things out. Now this is 50 all the way here, so I want to subtract 4. to get 46. And then drag this one across. This is 133 minus 4, so that'd be 129. There we go. Okay. So what I want to do with this is where my actual button is going to be. Okay, and I don't need to lay out every single one of these because eventually I can just copy this whole slot. So if I drag this inside here, now I have a nice little button. Now what I want to do is I like the squareness of these, but you'll see that they have, if I go to view image, zoom in on this, maybe, there we go. They have some rounded corners where the corners are just kind of like clipped a little bit, okay? So we can do that inside Photoshop. If I go to select, I go to modify and I go to smooth, I can do a simple radius, let's say 3 pixels, and you'll see that now I have a 3 pixel radius on here, okay? Now it looks kind of blocky. I'm going to zoom way in here, you'll see it's really blocky. So I'm going to hit undo, and maybe I'll do a smaller one. Okay, it's still a bit blocky, and even if I fill that in, you can tell it's definitely blocky. Okay, so sometimes you can get some good results with doing that smooth. Keeping in mind too that when we're zoomed out, we're not going to see it too much. But I'm going to do a different thing. So what I'm going to do is go over here to my selection and go to my elliptical tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, hold shift, and drag this down. Okay, and I'm going to drag this to the radius that I want. So 5 pixels looks like it's pretty good. And you'll see it's going to be blocky. When we're dealing with these small things, I'm zoomed into 3200%. It's going to look kind of blocky, but it'll work. Okay, so let me zoom back into that area. So I'm going to fill that in with black. So I'm just going to go Alt backspace, because black is my foreground color, and you'll see that it fills that in. Then I'm going to hold down the control key and grab this, and I can grab this and move it. Now if I hold down control and just drag it, you'll see that it just moves it. Hit undo. I'm going to hold down control and alt, and now I can copy it. And all I'm going to do is copy it to this corner here. And then I'm going to copy it to that corner there. I'm going to copy it to this corner here. There we go. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is switch back to my rectangular marquee. I'm just going to fill in the rest of this. Okay. Now I can't just do this because that'll overwrite what I have. So I'm going to create that and then go to select, transform selection, and then I'm going to shrink it down. So I'm going to bring it in to about there, halfway there, and halfway there. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to hit control backspace again. I'm sorry, alt backspace again. So now that filled that area in. Then I'm going to go back to select, transform selection, and I'm going to bring it all the way back up, all the way back down, and I'm going to bring this guy in a couple, bring this guy in a couple, and then enter, alt backspace, and then control D to deselect. Okay, now it looks like I have pixels all over here, or lines. That's because under view, show, I'm still showing the pixel grid. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so there's what my box looks like. Okay, so you can see it does have some clipped edges around there too. Now there's 100 different ways I can do this. Just to show you another way, I'm just going to fill this entire thing with black, alt backspace, and I'm going to go in with my elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to go to the corner again. I'm just going to draw another radius. So this one I'll make a little bit bigger so we can see it better. So I'll go 5 pixels on this one. Oops. Maybe a bit more. Let's go to 10 pixels. Okay, and I'm looking at that corner right there. Alright, so what I can do here is that I can take this once I have it, and this is what's selected. So if let's say I went to my eraser tool and I started erasing, you'll see it's erasing that. Well, I can switch this. I can say select inverse and then erase the edges, and that'll round off that. And I'll select inverse again. I'll go back to my circle tool, and then I can move this to this corner, select inverse again, go to my eraser tool, there we go, select inverse again. You can see the short key is Control Shift I, and then my marquee tool is M, so I'll just use that. So Control Shift I, eraser tool is E, tap it a couple times, Control Shift I, M, drag this over here, Control Shift I, E, and then Control D to deselect. Okay, so there's another way that I can get that shape. As you get further in the class, you'll find out even more ways to create them that are even better than just doing it that way. Okay, our goal in this is just to get that initial shape. Now you'll see that at the corners of these, we are getting some grays in here, and that's where the colors aren't fully developed, where we're getting these little bits of black in here. So when we take a selection like this, you'll see that even though we drew it as a circle, it comes up like this just because of where the pixels are. And then as we fill it, it fills the center darker, and then it fills the lighter ones lighter, just to help kind of create that transition. Okay. Alright, so there's our little button, and from way out here it looks pretty nice. If I hit Control H, it'll hide my guide so I can just look at the button itself. Alright, that looks pretty good. So what I want to do now is I want to give this some color. Alright, so I'm going to use some of my effects over here. So I'm just going to double click this, and I'm going to go to Color Overlay, and you'll see how it changes the entire color of this thing. Okay, this Color Overlay allows me to adjust coloring. Now it's important, I'm going to hit cancel. When I double click, I can't double click on the word because it'll make me rename it. I have to double click in this blank space out here. Alright, so I'm going to do color overlay. Now there's also, if I uncheck this, there's a gradient overlay. And this gradient overlay is where we can actually add a gradient to that color instead. Alright, so I'm going to go to the gradient itself, and if I choose this down here, I get to pick a color. So I can choose something like, here it is, the color swatch. I can click this and just pick a color. Now the way this works is here are all the different colors, and then inside here is the saturation going from left to right, and then up and down is the value. Okay, so let's say I wanted blue, like that. That's cool. And I'm just going to hit OK on that last button. Now what I want to do is swap these. I want the blue to be on top, so I'm just going to flip it like this, and then see if I like it. Do I like that? That looks nice. Okay. Now I'm going to hit OK. Now here's another spot. If I didn't like the way that was rotated, I could have also just come here and just set this angle here to rotate it. Okay, so even though I may want to change it, I can adjust things later. I can also adjust the scale of these things. So if I want that blue to be a bit softer, a bit sharper, I can do that within this box here. I can also change the opacity, so I'm mixing it with that original color. Okay, I can reverse it, so that's just swapping the colors that are in there. And I can change the style of it. So now it's a radial, now it's an angle, now it's reflected, whatever. Reflected actually doesn't look too bad. Maybe I'll change the scale of this a touch and bring that opacity in. Okay, that's good. Now I want to give this some depth also. So I added the gradient overlay just to give it some color. So now I want to go to Bevel Emboss and give it a little bit of thickness. Okay, I don't want to go crazy with this. I want it to be a subtle effect. And I can preview the effect by just toggling this on and off. Okay, now I can preview the whole thing on and off by just taking this preview on and off. You'll find that these preview buttons and these on-off switches are all over Photoshop. Okay, I can soften that bevel. Let me make it a little bit more enhanced so you can see it. I can soften the bevel. I could change the size of it. I could adjust the angle of the light. That can be very apparent in this one. Okay, and do lots of different things. Okay, I also want to add, we talked about a drop shadow. If I add this drop shadow here, you'll see the effect of it. And you can see why we wanted to have that little buffer zone, because this drop shadow is going to extend past this. Let me take my opacity up so you can see it better. There it is. You can see that drop shadow. You can see how pronounced it is. So I'm just going to drop it down to where it was, keeping it as a subtle item. And I'm also going to take the angle. I think I want the angle to be like that. Okay. Now a drop shadow works great for something like this because it's supposed to be like an item floating above the paper. Okay. When we get into later assignments, you'll find that we can't just do a drop shadow to create a shadow. This is something that looks very fake and something very digital. We don't want that to look like that all the time. All right. So there's our drop shadow. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit Control H just so I can see the button and see if I like the way that's looking. And I do. I like the way that it reads. Now I want to put some text on here. Okay. So I'm going to go to my text tool, which is T, or it's right there. I'm going to zoom in. Control H to bring my guides back. And I'm going to click and drag right inside those inner guides. Okay. Now just like we had these buttons here, I said I wanted to use these as my things. So looking at the longest word, which is download, I want to type that one first. Even though that might not be my first button, I want to type download first because it's very important that we make sure that all the buttons can fit. Okay, so I typed in the word download, and you'll see that download did not fit. It just says dow. So I'm going to hit in here, I'm going to hit Control A, and that will select all my text. Up here is my text tools. Okay, so if I click and drag on the T, it'll actually shrink the text. There we go. So now we can see the word download, and it fits. I'm going to go here to center, and then I'm going to go to my arrow, and I'm going to click and drag to bring this down. Now I'm also holding Shift so it doesn't go left and right. Okay, Shift is a constrainer. So I can bring it right about there. I'm going to switch back to my text tool and double click it again. And then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So maybe I'll make it 6. Nope, 6 doesn't want to fit. 5. 5 fits. Okay. Yeah, I can hit the check. Now you can't hit enter. If I'm in here and I hit enter, it'll actually just return it. So I either have to hit Control or Command Enter, or I have to hit this check mark. There we go. Okay. Now again, we're working at, if I zoom out, we're working at 500%. So when we're here at 100, that's what it should look like. Okay. So do I like it in black? Do I want it a different color? I can change my text by going up to this color here and changing the color. Okay. Obviously I can't go lighter because then it's going to be hard to see. But I may want to grab some of this blue. You can see how I turn to a little eyedropper, and if I click, it'll actually sample that color, and then I can change it from there. So I think I like it like this darker blue. And then I'm also going to come over here to my text and make this bold. There, that way I can really read it. At this, I'll even do condense so it's even harder. It's hard to see what that even says. It's hard to see what that says so much. Make it bold, bam, now we can see it. Okay, so wonderful. So download, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control H again just to see, and I'm liking the way that this button is looking. Okay, so what I could do is start duplicating this, and I'll have my 6 buttons. But I want to have something else in here. Okay, what I want to have is I want to have what's called an overstate. Okay, it's not like an overstatement. Overstate buttons. Feel free anytime you're working and you don't understand a term, just Google it. Google is a great resource to see exactly what I'm talking about, even though I may not explain it the perfect way every single time. So what an overstate is here's your normal button when you go to a website. When the mouse goes over it, you'll see that the color has changed. This orange is now a bit orangier, okay? And then when you click on it, it turns to a different color. There's actually like a little bit other stuff happening here. So orange turns to that color, and then it turns to this color. So that's what an overstate is that when you go to a website and the button changes as you interact with it, that's what we would want. Here's another example. Here's the normal, here's the hover, here's the active. Okay, so typically people will create several different versions of the same button. Now we could also add some other stuff to this too. If we want that text to pop out a little bit, I can double click the text. And I can even add, maybe a drop shadow to this if I needed that to maybe pop out a little bit more. Okay, I could even do a bevel emboss, and there's a style called a pillow emboss, which looks like it's like indented into that thing there. I'm not really liking that, how that's looking. Sometimes it's a matter of just going to these and just playing around and just seeing, what do they do. There's great resources online too for seeing exactly what each one of these is going to do. Here's an outer glow. Yeah, and then there's that drop shadow again. Maybe a little drop shadows, okay. Yeah, that looks good. It makes it pop. That's what we want. We want this to stand out. Okay, so now what I want to do is create my my overstate, and this is my standard. So looking at my layers here, I'm just going to double click this layer and just call this download underscore btn. What I want to do is keep these organized, because as I start to duplicate this stuff, and I have a download regular button, I have a download over button, and then I'm going to have these other buttons in here that are going to be doing the same thing. I want to make sure that these stay organized all the time. So if I click on one button, one layer, shift click the next one, and I go to this drop down box, I can go to new group from layers. And in here, I'm just going to call this download, because that's the button that we're currently working on. And you'll see that it puts it in this nice little folder. Okay, now this is a download button, which is exactly what I wanted it to be called, right? Okay, and there's all the stuff. So what I can do is I'm going to double click it, and at the end of it, I'm going to add an underscore std. That means standard. Okay, there we go. So I can turn it off, turn it on, see it, whatever. So now I want to duplicate this. So I can take this whole folder and just drag it to this new icon. So this is the new layer icon here. I just drag this to the new layer icon, and I'll have a copy of it. And I can double click it and get rid of the std and just call this over. Okay. So now you'll see I have, if I open up the standard, there's the stuff that we currently created. And here's the other stuff that I just created. All right. So now I can just change this. So what I'm going to do is just go to my gradient for the button. So I just double clicked any one of these effects and it'll open up the effects window. I'm going to go to the gradient, and maybe I'll just take the opacity down a little bit. Okay. So you can see because the opacity is down, it looks like it's a different button. So just to show you, here's the standard. When the mouse goes over it, it would look like that. Okay, maybe I'll even take the text here and go to color overlay, and instead of this being gray, I'll make that black, and then I'll take this opacity down. I just want both to darken is what my goal is. Okay, so I made this black, take the opacity to halfway. Alright, so now just to see it, there's the regular button. Someone comes to my web page, they see it, they move their mouse over it, it turns to that. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. You can have anything happen. I could have the colors change, you know, whatever. You want to keep it subtle. You don't want it to be crazy. Now, these are good examples because when they go to the website, they can see, okay, here's what this looks like. Then it changes to this, and then I click it, and it does that. Okay, something like this, where we go from normal to hovering it to green. You know, it's acceptable. It has to have the right kind of look to it, but you want to keep it subtle most of the time. All right, you can even see here. There's that. There's that. There's that. Okay, and this one they went from darker to lightening it. All right, so that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two layers, these two groups, and I'm going to drag this down to the new layer button, and I'll get two copies. I'm going to switch to my move tool, which is V. I'm going to click and drag. Okay, now I want to move this 133 pixels over to the right. You'll see that I'm kind of locked into that snapping phase. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to go to view, turn my snap off. There we go. Try this again. Sometimes it wants to drag diagonally, so just don't let it. There we go. 133. Now I'm going to drag this again. Oops, sorry. There we go. I have to duplicate it first. I'm just going to drag this and duplicate it. And I have to make sure I grab both of them. If I don't grab both, then I'm going to be off a little bit. There we go. There we go. Duplicate these. Drag it over there. Duplicate these. Drag it over there. And you'll see that I'm at 133 and I'm actually like running out of room here. We'll adjust that. There we go. All that happened is my math was off. It happens sometimes. So this one, let's see, this one is at 532. I'm visual, so I have to like see this stuff here. And then plus 133, 665. And I went to 655. So that was just my math being inaccurate. I'm going to have to zoom in to really get that locked down. There we go. Alright, so here's our buttons. Now what I need to do is go through and change all the buttons. Alright, so what I like to do is just turn them all off. Okay, and then I'm going to stick with the top ones and work my way down. Okay, or sorry, the first one and work my way over. So like we talked about in this one, I'm going to use download, upload, search, cancel, send, and next. So I think the first thing I want to do is maybe put I'll do this exact order: download, upload, search, cancel, send. Okay, so this one's done. There's download, done. And then this one, which is going to be upload, I'm going to turn this on. I'm turning one on at a time. I'm going to double click my text here and put upload. Okay, now it called it upload here, but it didn't name it here, so I want you to see that. If I come over here and change this, that it will, if I change the text there, it'll change it here. Alright, so I'm just going to go to this, oops, and rename this upload button. Okay, and then rename this one to be upload underscore std. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go to my download area, make sure I turn this on, call it upload. Then I'm going to go down to here and rename this upload button. And then I'm going to double click this and call this upload over. Okay, notice how I'm doing the underscore std all in caps, underscore over all in caps. Okay, and I'm doing all of these in all caps. That way it's easier to read. All right, so then I'm going to go to the next one. I turn that one on, and that one's going to be search. So it doesn't matter what order I do this in. So search underscore std. Change this to search. Change that to search. We have to keep this stuff organized. You can't expect that you're going to be the only one working on a project. So you have to assume that other people are going to be opening up your files. So you always want to make sure that you name your stuff accordingly. So someone coming into your file is going to have no problem going in there and seeing, okay, this is exactly where you put this is exactly where you put that. And it all makes sense for them. Cancel, send, next. I could even do this and just kind of power through this. Send, next. Go. And then same thing, just open this up. Oops. Got ahead of myself. Cancel. And I'm just using Control Enter every time I type something in to get that to accept. I turn this on. I open it up. I'm in my text tool still, so I just highlight. Type in cancel, Control Enter, go down to this button, go to my send, turn that on. Now I could just highlight the text and copy it. That way anytime I'm going here I can just highlight and paste. I like that to be all the same. So it'll just it could make things easier. At this point, it's not really a huge deal for me just to type that in. The words are small enough that it's sufficient not to do that. It also gives us a chance to work on our typing, which for most people, they need help. I don't need any help typing. I'm perfect in every way. This is next. Okay, so now here are all our buttons, and if we wanted to see what the standard states are, it's going to be kind of a hassle to go through. You have to go through every other one here and turn these off. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do something that's going to make this a bit easier. And one thing I want to do before I even do that is I'm going to save my scene. So I'm going to go to save. I'm going to put it in my D drive here, 1320, work. I'll make a new folder called WebpageButtons. And I'm just going to call it Sarcona Buttons 01 as a PSD file and save. Hit OK. Always good in the habit of saving your stuff quite often. Alright, so here's my buttons. I want to create something that will allow me to just click so I can see all of them, click so I can see the standard, or click so I can see the over. So under window, I'm going to go to layer comps. Okay, and what this allows you to do is just save how your document looks right away. So right now I like the way this looks, so I'm going to make a new layer comp. And this is going to be called the standard state. Okay, so that's the standard state. So now if I click off that and I make a new state, and I'll call this the over state. Now in the over state, I'm just going to swap these. Oops. I forgot to hit the update button. There we go. So now as I click these little things, you'll see that it's going to update what those look like. So now I go to standard, that's what standard is. I go to over, now I go to over. Okay, very powerful tool, especially when we get into other things where it's like heavy duty layering. Okay, so now we have one more step in this process to get this to be actually buttons, because right now it's still a document. I'm going to save my document again. I'm going to switch back to my, not my rectangular marquee. What I want to do is go in here under my cropping tool, and I want to go to the slice tool. Okay, and I know the hotkey is C for this to get to that. So what I want to do is I need to cut this up into individual documents. Okay, that's what the what a web page has, is just a bunch of individual documents. So I'm going to click and drag around here, and I want to click and drag and grab the entire 133 box, not the inner box, just that smaller one. And I also want to make sure I go to my view and turn snap on. There we go. Alright, so you'll see now that there's a number 1 in blue, and then there's number 2 in gray. So now I'm going to slice again right next to it. Now there's number 2 in blue and a 3 in gray. So what this is doing is it's going to allow us to separate our document. There we go. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these blue buttons. And I'm going to save this again. And I'm going to go to File and go to Save for Web. Okay, and I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to highlight all of these buttons. Okay, so this is how we would save for a website. So I'm going to go to up here where it says GIF, and I'm going to choose ping 24. Actually, ping 8 will probably be fine. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on that just a touch. Yeah, I'm not seeing a huge difference here. Ping 24 is just better with transparency stuff. Ping 8, we really don't need any transparency for what we're doing. Alright, so I've highlighted all of these. I've chosen ping 8 from the list. And then I can play with these colors here. If I go to 2, it's going to output 2 colors. Obviously, it's not enough. 4, 16, still a little bit. 32, 64 is probably good. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to output this these 6 images with 64 colors, and that's it. This is perfect. And I'm going to hit save, and it's going to say where do you want to save it and what do you want to call it. So I'm going to put it into my D drive, put it into WebpageButtons, and I'm going to call it WebButtons 01. Okay. Now, if I just go like that and I output this, it's going to output these as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not going to output them as names, even though we named layers. Okay. So just to show you, you would hit cancel at this point. I'm going to hit save, just so you can see this. Oops. Okay, so you'll see it says WebButtons 01, WebButtons 0101, 0102, 0103, 0104, and so on. Okay, so I don't want that. I'm going to delete those. So what I want to do is I want to click on each one of these little slices. Oops. And that's when we go to Save for Web. I'm going to double click it, and then here I can name that button. So I'm going to call this download _ std. I'm going to double click the next one and call it upload _ std. Double click the next one. Search _ std. Double click the next one. Cancel _ std. Actually, I'm going to just call these send. That'll be easier. I'm just going to get rid of the std part and just call it cancel. There we go. Okay. So now we're still ping 8s and everything. It saved all that information. I'm going to hit save. What am I call this? std images only, and hit save. Okay, so now inside my images, or inside my web page buttons folder, which is right here, it makes an images folder. And inside that images folder, it makes a cancel, a download, a next, a search, a send, and an upload. So what I'm going to do is just add that std inside here. So _std, and then I can just highlight that and copy it. I can just go to the next one and paste. Go to the next one and paste. And you'll see why we're doing it this way as opposed to the other way in a second. Okay, so here's all of our standard buttons. So now I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and I'm going to switch this to my overstate. And then I'm going to go back to my Save for Web. And then everything's still all set. Everything's still perfect. Save it again. Same spot. Back to images. And now you'll see we have our other ones that are now cancel, download, next, that are in darker. So now I'm going to go into my cancel and type in _over and copy that and go to each one of these and paste that into that area. Here. There we go. Okay, so now wonderful, we have over buttons and we have standard buttons. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so the next part of this is just to save this again and close it. Okay, so now let's pretend that you're done with the assignment. You've gotten this far, you've gotten your PSD file, and inside your images you have all of these images. That's all I need you to turn in. Okay, so what I want you to do to turn your stuff in is you're going to grab both of these. Okay, now you're going to actually have another set. Once you're done with the first set that you've done with me kind of following along, you're going to make a brand new set. You can use the same dimensions, you can use the same techniques, but I want a different look to it. I want you to go through and maybe make an orange set or a white set or a blue set or whatever. You can try different shapes in there too. As you can see from this example, that they're not always just perfectly square, sometimes they're rounded. So you can try that as well. You can try adding a different effect in there. You can look up different kinds of buttons and create those buttons. I want 6 buttons still, but I want you to create it, on your own. Okay, not my exact example. I want one that's exactly like mine, and I want one that's your own design. Okay, don't spend too long on it. Same amount of time. Okay, so once you have these, you'll have 2 PSDs, and you'll have 2 images folders. I'm going to call this images folder 01. That way we know it goes with this one. And then you'll have another one, and I'm just going to, for the sake of showing you this, drug shortcuts, I wanted to actually copy this. There we go. So you'll have 2 PSDs, and you'll have 2 image folders. Each one is going to be different, so you'll have an image folder that goes with this, and you'll have an image folder that goes with that. So you're going to take all of these, and you're going to right-click. In Windows and Mac, you have to do it a different way, and you're going to do a compressed zip folder. Okay? And you're going to rename it, whatever your name is. So my name is sarcona_webbuttons.zip. On a Mac, Google it. Compress files on a Mac. Yeah, I believe it might even be the same thing. Yeah, file compress. There you go. It'll still work. And there. Okay, so you're going to take this file here, and you're going to go to your Dropbox folder that you created. So there's my 1320 Dropbox folder. And you're going to drop this into your Dropbox folder. Okay, it's going to go through, it's going to say, uploading, 1 second left, whatever. Done. This one's going to take not very long because it's such a quick thing. Then you're going to say share, and you're going to copy that address. And you're going to go to Angel. It works today. Wonderful. And once Angel loads, there we go. Here's week 1. Here is creating web page buttons. Here, and you're going to paste your link, and you're going to give it a title, sarcona_webpagebuttons, and then you're going to say submit, and you'll submit that, and that way I know that you've turned in your web page buttons. And there we go. Beautiful. Okay, and then you'll get a grade on it when I do the grading on those. Okay, so that's the assignment. So you're creating 2 sets of buttons, one with me, one on your own, and turning those in. Both are going to have PSDs. Both are going to have the same setup. So in your other document, you're going to have the same thing. You have the standard, the over, you're going to have everything named nice and neat. Your name will be up here in your file. It'll be called WebButtons02 for your other one. And you'll save them all out as a separate set of images. So you would have images here, images there. One would be called images 01, one would be called images 02, and so on. And they would coincide with the names of your stuff. Okay. Now that's the assignment, how you turn it in, whatever else. Now just so you can see how it's applied, I brought one of the buttons into Dreamweaver. This is the download button. And when I preview this, here's the button inside of a web page. And as I hover my mouse over this, you can see that's what it's doing, is that as I go over that button, it's switching to that other one. Now I could load the other ones in here as well. I'm not totally familiar with Dreamweaver CC. I don't use it too often, which is hardly ever. So I'm just going to go to image rollover image after. And my next button was upload, which is pretty obvious. My rollover image is the rollover upload button. Okay. And I preview this. And now you'll see I have upload and download. Okay. Now it's not doing anything to darken this image. It's actually just loading a brand new image. When I hover over this, it loads that other image. When I hover over this one, it loads that other image. And just to kind of prove that, I'm going to insert another one. And for my original image, let's say I use search. Okay, that's the next one. But then for my rollover image, I can actually choose any one of these. I'll just choose send and hit OK. So now when I go to preview this, here's download, perfect, upload, perfect, search. You'll see that it shows send because it's just loading that other image. That's all it's doing. Okay, so now you've created your first row of buttons. You don't need to actually do the Dreamweaver part. I just wanted to show it just so you can kind of see where this is going to be applying at a later state. Okay, so there we go. There's our web page buttons, our first assignment done and over with. If you have to do it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, then do it, because the easier time you have in this first one, or the better you are doing that first one, the easier it's going to be on all the other assignments. Okay, so make sure you understand the concepts of selecting things, adding guides, using the effects over here. Be comfortable with those, saving things out, and so forth. Okay, good luck.